Numerous colleges are dialing back their DEI initiatives, shutting down whole offices in response to the executive order by President Trump's administration. You and I need to talk about this. I'm Marcus Peter. So, as I mentioned in the open, President Trump issued executive orders calling for the dissolution of offices that have geared towards DEI efforts.
This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
Now, the reason why these programs have been so detrimental, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is because everywhere that these programs have been established, we jettison meritocracy in the name of inclusivity, but really in the name of the inclusion and overt glorification of particular subsets of the human population on the basis of race, on the basis of being minority subsets and populations. Herein lies the grander issue with that problem. If we establish an equitable, and I mean a true equal meritocracy, then what we're looking for is the best of the best, always. And yes, there will be certain circumstances where people of certain minority subsets will not be able to be the best of the best in different things. But they will be the best of the best in other things, because the whole name of the game here is outperforming the other for the sake of productivity and service of the common good in society. That is how society is meant to be built. If you want to talk about the building of the common good and the creation of enterprises and industry for the sake of human flourishing, then this is the way society has to be built. It has to be a true meritocracy. A virtuous, religious, moral nation has to be grounded upon a true meritocracy. Anytime any other system is introduced that reverses or negates a meritocracy, we have a problem. Now, there were points in American history where there were ceilings for those who were in minority subsets, including people like me. I want to make very clear. I came from a nation, by the way, that actually has constitutional racism, systemic racism enshrined in the operations of its nation. And so if you look like me, there are certain government positions you can't have, certain university seats you can never have. And that's the truth of the matter. For all our griping about the United States, the fact is, and on paper and in practicum, this is a reality. There is no other nation that possesses a clearer, more flourishing system of upward social mobility and equality of opportunity. And if you have that, you have the foundations of a virtuous meritocracy. When you introduce DEI systems, you introduce potential destruction into that system. However, some universities have complied, and thankfully, we still don't know where this is going to go, so we want to keep our fingers crossed here that they're doing the right thing the right way. But the University of Michigan announced the closure of its Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, its ODEI. It ended its DEI 2.0 strategic plan. Ohio State University also eliminated its DEI offices and even programming, closure of its Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and the Center for Belonging and Social Change. University of Florida closed its Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement and terminated 13 full-time employees with DEI-related jobs. I can go on and on. My point, however, is that hopefully institutions are learning the lesson here. What is the lesson? In light of this federal crackdown, we need to create a true equality of opportunity. Now, that means that there's going to be a kind of quote-unquote pluralistic system, but hopefully the pluralistic system is one that recognizes that everyone operates on an equal playing field and earns a seat at the table by means of performance. If that is the case, by all means, because that's going to bring about the flourishing of the nation. If that is not the case, then we need to relook at this. Because here's the thing. These requirements have destroyed the nation. A 2023 Gallup poll showed only 36% of Americans have confidence in higher education. It's a sharp decline from higher numbers in the past. And the reason why is because a lot of these DEI efforts have made it so that up to even 40 credit hours need to be devoted to DEI. And when you consider that tuition is now averaging out about $42,000, $43,000 a year, that's an absurd amount of money for an absurd amount of credits that will serve an absurd no purpose in the person's life. Economist Walter E. Williams criticized higher academic institutions as follows. Universities have failed in their function of the pursuit of academic excellence by having dumbed down classes and granting degrees to students who are just barely literate and computationally incompetent. Political scientist Matt Goodwin, he talked about a concern for dominance of ideologies. Universities have been dominated by a militant liberalism that suppresses dissent and undermines intellectual diversity. This is in his book, Bad Education. What's the Catholic response then? The Catholic response is always holiness, sanctification, and virtue. Ex corde ecclesiae, from the heart of the church, the church tells us, a Catholic university assists each of its members to achieve wholeness as human persons and in this way fulfill their personal vocations. Now, yes, it's speaking about Catholic universities, but when you expand that conversation to universities at large, you need to ask yourself, parents, as I need to ask myself, why are we sending our children to universities? If the purpose is not the formation of the whole person, ultimately to holiness and the fulfillment of personal vocations, we have missed the boat entirely, and we need to rethink educational philosophy. Yes, I said that. Let that be a challenge to you and to me. St. John Henry Newman, in his book, or his work, I should say, The Idea of a University, it is the education which gives man a clear, conscious view of his own opinions and judgments, a truth in developing them, an eloquence in expressing them, and a force in urging them. All of that doesn't exist anymore. Because we've turned education, including higher education, into utilitarian systems that are only mechanistic. We need to rethink the education system. So as more and more people lose confidence in public institutions, I'm not saying universities are evil, hopefully we can see a revamping and a rise of classical education that will form the whole human person towards the flourishing of the entire human species and race, especially here in the United States, including in the STEM areas. Because what we need are holy people functioning to build up society at large together for the sake of the common good. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.